Buffalo gals come out tonight, come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gals come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon.
Deputy Director of Communications to the President of the United States. It's an impressive title that follows the name of Buffalo, New York native Elizabeth Allen. But then Liz, as she is known around the White House, is a pretty impressive 32-year-old woman with a strong sense of self and the courage to follow her dreams wherever they may lead. Liz primarily credits her adventurous nature and her successful career to her parents and to her hometown, which she states have provided her with lifelong support and a true sense of place. You're from Buffalo, New York. We need to have that right up front.
I'm from Buffalo very proudly. I could go on and on about Buffalo, actually.
And do you feel the spirit of Tim Russert in the White House at all, or in the areas?
I think we feel the sense of Tim Russert in the whole city, to be honest with you.
Really?
He died in 2008 when then Senator Obama was running for president, and so that year sticks out for many reasons, but Tim represented, I think, the best of journalism, and frankly also looked for the good that government can do with his history with Daniel Patrick Moynihan and others. And so I know, inspired by his sort of sense of the best of public service and the best of journalism and his sense of Buffalo. Buffalo taught me about loyalty. Buffalo taught me what it was to care about people, whether it comes to, Bills fandom or caring about your neighbors or really having a sense of place and where you're from. I'm grateful to have carried that with me in Buffalo. So I'm the oldest of three. My brother Steve is in the middle and my sister Katie is the youngest, and we grew up very close. We're all only 2 years apart from each other. We all remain close to this day.
What makes you so close?
Being close in age, I think that sort of sets you up. We went out and played all the time. We were playing hide and seek, we were making forts, my brother was playing sports, we were running summer camps. That was very much a part of our growing up. And so because we all grew up in a neighborhood with kids in our age range, we were together a lot. We also took a lot of family vacations. So I think between vacations and having common friends and having common experiences, we stayed quite close.
When you traveled, did your family ever come to D.C.?
We came to D.C. There's a picture hanging in my parents' kitchen of our whole family standing in front of the gates of the White House when I was in high school. I remember standing outside the White House and always feeling magnetized. I remember going in for the White House tour and thinking, gosh, this is like the center of the universe. This is really the ultimate seat of power. And of course, when you're younger, that was devoid of partisan politics. That was just based on having grown up with a keen interest in history and a love of civics and current events, that I had a very keen awareness and respect for our government very early on.
At a young age, it's unusual for kids to care about history. Yeah. Where did that come from?
In my house, reading the newspaper and watching the nightly news was a routine. And so I think that part of it comes from growing up with an awareness of current events. And if you're, aware of current events, I think that leads very naturally to understanding how those events came to be. And so you sort of have this sense of history and why things are the way they are. I read the paper almost every day in college when most kids were either on the internet or not doing that. I would make a point to stop in the library, get a coffee, and read the USA Today, and it was free in the student union. And I remember my friends thought it was the funniest routine that I had, but reading the news was always important. So I think that's part of it. I also had a really, really good experience with history teachers. I left high school thinking I was going to be a social studies teacher.
Really?
I did, yeah.
Where did you go to college?
I went to a school at SUNY Geneseo in upstate New York, and they were one of the best schools in New York State to go be an education major. And so I had applied for and gotten scholarships to be a teacher coming out of high school until I decided my sophomore year of college. I woke up and said, I think I could be a teacher later in life, but I want to give something else a try when I'm younger. And I want to go work in D.C. And I wasn't even
Just
sure.
like that?
Just like that. I was actually in a history class that I wasn't enjoying as much as some of the other history classes. And I thought, I don't know that I want to sit through this and then teach it. That magnetism I mentioned from D.C. had never really left my mind. And I felt a pretty strong calling to go try to experience it for myself. And at the time, I didn't really know what that meant. But yes, I'll never forget dropping some classes the first week of my sophomore year, calling my parents and saying, I'm not going to be a teacher anymore, and I'm going to give back some of that scholarship money, and I'm going to go work in D.C. after I graduate.
And their answer was?
What are you going to do? What do you think you're going to do? But we support you. When it comes to my parents, they have always been very supportive of myself and my siblings in a way that we all feel deeply grateful for. When we were younger, they were certainly strict in the sense that schoolwork was important, going to church was important, treating others well was important, not mouthing back was important, all of those sort of things. But it was sort of coupled with encouragement to go out and try our own thing. And so I think I felt empowered to make those kinds of decisions, or at least present those kinds of decisions with their support in terms of where to go to school, what your major should be, what jobs to get.
And if you're going to change and try to get a job in D.C., what do you change your major to in college?
So the good news was I was a political science major with sort of an education secondary track. So I kept my political science major and just dropped the education track, and I picked up a sociology minor. But really, I think what set apart my experience at Geneseo was that I was able to engineer my coursework so that I did an internship and a study abroad within those 4 years, graduated on time. Part of this interest in current events and civics was certainly a parallel interest in international affairs, because a lot of those things are obviously intertwined. And so I knew I wanted to study abroad. I wasn't quite sure where, but I ended up doing the semester at sea program when I was a sophomore, and we sailed around the world. It was 3.5 months. It was a full semester. You boarded a ship with 600 students and as many crew and faculty, and knew probably no one, maybe 1 or 2 other people if you had other people from your school. And you were literally sailing around the world and not knowing what you would sort of discover. And it was funny when I looked into doing it, we had a family friend that did it, which is where I got the idea. And I remember thinking, wow, like how can you match going to 10 countries over 4 months? For me personally, it seemed like a better option than doing a sort of in-depth one country study abroad, just in my case, knowing that I wanted to sort of see as much as I possibly could, and I wasn't doing it for language purposes. So off we went, and I was one of the youngest people on the ship. I was 19.
The idea of it never intimidated you?
Not especially, to be honest. And part of that was because I didn't get seasick, and I knew that I wouldn't get seasick.
But not knowing anybody, you're in a confined space for 4 months. I'm sure you got off at ports, but nonetheless.
Yeah, we got off at every port, and we spent 3 to 6 days in each of the 10 countries. So there was certainly plenty of off-ship time. I think I viewed the experience less as an intimidating one, as more as a liberating one, because it was one where you could go, and I don't think I reinvented myself. I think that's probably too strong of a term, but you could sort of go be who you were, or in some people's cases, they discovered things about themselves they hadn't before, because you were sort of freed from your social norms or your expectations from your friends back home or what have you. So in some ways, it was actually pretty unbelievable to start from the ground up, and to be forced out of your comfort zone, I think was a useful experience, and one I'm grateful for.
And then where was your internship? Because you have to start playing the political game here somewhere.
Yes, exactly. How did we get to where we are today?
Right.